Welcome to Sounding Board, the podcast about freedom, capitalism, and lockdown lunacy. Evening, Eddie.
I can't wait until we don't have to say that
We
anymore.
can take that bit out when it's.
According to you, it'll be about 5 years' time, if
Yeah.
ever.
Well, and it won't necessarily all be about lockdown. Lockdown lunacy just has a nice ring to it, and I like that better than lockdown skeptic in this way.
A little bit of alliteration there.
Yeah, but it's so related to government control of our lives that it obviously is related to being pro-freedom. So I don't know whether it's going to morph into something else is what I'm getting at, because when it's masks and it's not lockdown, or when it's vaccines and it's not lockdown, can it all be put under lockdown lunacy? So that's a placeholder for now for a level of anti-freedom that has yet to be defined, because none of us thought it would be a thing. You know, we would list on the soundingboard.com website, you know, free trade, free speech, free markets. And
That's how we used to introduce the podcast
yeah,
back in the day.
We never thought that you'd need to establish another level of freedom so fundamental as the freedom to go outside your house, or the freedom to go into a shop without being muzzled, or the freedom to get close to someone else. Have you seen... This isn't what I wanted to talk about in this podcast. Have you seen the government guidance on how to protect yourself having sex?
Oh, is it a bit like glory holes? And I thought that was a joke.
Advocating glory holes.
I thought that was a joke when I first read it.
No,
and
it's real. It's bizarre. I thoroughly recommend anyone look up this guidance, because it's just really, really funny. All of it's funny.
So you
no kissing.
You took me to task in the last podcast when I was talking about agent-based software and about kind of little Pac-Man moving around and NPCs. So for the benefit of our listener, Nick, what's a glory hole?
Look, NPC is a technical term that you needed to define what it meant.
And I defined that upon being asked the question.
Do you want the explicit tag against this particular podcast? Let me Google that for you. Anyway, this is not what I wanted to talk about.
We'll let the listener as an exercise for themselves if they're interested.
Exactly.
Google that in incognito mode and then delete their history afterwards.
With a VPN on. Yeah. We touched on this at the end of the last podcast, and I thought, you know what, we could end up talking for hours about this, because I've got some ideas on the direction I wanted to particularly take, and it was when we started ranting about it.
Was it my Steve Baker rant?
Yes, and
right.
To be fair, I teed you up with it, because it was totally related to what we were talking about.
I can't help myself with Steve Baker. Well, it's not just him, but there are a number of so-called libertarians.
Wait! Hold that rant. In the US, there's a Libertarian Party. Okay? That's fine. Yeah, I'll carry on.
Cool.
I'll carry on. Well, and I want to talk about that. And there are also senators, congressmen and women that define themselves being more on the libertarian side. They will define themselves as libertarians in the Republican Party.
So you've got like the Gary Johnson...
Governors.
Yeah, so you've got Gary Johnson, who's the Libertarian Party. And then are you talking about people like Rand Paul and
Yeah, exactly.
Ted Cruz kind of
likes to... Some Tea Partyists.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the US... because of their constitution, because of the Declaration of Independence and all this kind of stuff, you know, live free or die, all of this, they have a different relationship with the concept of liberty, and they certainly have a more extreme, a more radical way of looking at it than we do over here in general. But also...
hasn't really worked though.
Right. So also... because of the way that their electoral system works, because of the way party politics works, and this particularly applies to the Republican Party, but it does apply in some measure to both main parties, Republicans and Democrats, someone from outside the party can become the leader of the party, can become the president, because it's not quite the same in terms of leadership. Can become president, can become the candidate for president without having risen up the ranks. Enter Donald Trump. not someone who ever held office in any way, shape, or form before. And he's kind of, I don't know if he's on record, but certainly he's been quoted as saying, well, if I ever run for president, I'll do it as a Republican, because that'll be easier or something. And he's right, and he was proved right. But my point there is that because of that system, and largely because the concept of libertarianism exists, because Trump got there, the chances of having a libertarian president in the US is much higher than having a libertarian prime minister here in this country. And I'm ignoring the fact that they still need to get voted in, that they would have to believe in democracy, and it's still not, it's not pure, it's not purist.
It's still basically nil in both places, I would say. I can't imagine anyone.
But they even have, right, but again, they have governors and they have senators who, you know, Rand Paul in debates early on, when he's run for, and even Newt Gingrich and people like this, but they have run intellectual rings around.
And how far did that get them?
No, but they were there. We don't have anyone even closely equivalent. I'm not saying there's suddenly going to be this surge, but I'm saying, relatively speaking, there's more chances of it happening in the US.
I'll grant you that.
Yep.
There's,
I mean,
there's 0.5% chance.
But what would it take? What would it take for it to happen in the UK? What would it take? Where would it come from?
I mean, I've thought, so funny you should say this, I've thought about what it would take in the US.
We'll start with that then. And you might just go, it's just impossible and I'm not going to do it in the UK.
So, and I've thought this for a while now, certainly the last kind of few elections, where you've got, I mean, how many people in America? 350 million or something. You know, it's a
few hundred million.
Quite a few. Yeah. And the two best people are Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, or George Bush and, you know, whatever.
I'm going to say that really does depend on your definition of best, but that's your point.
That's exactly my point. In that these are the two that you've got two main parties, and these people are the best that you can come up with. You know, the system is just rigged against having anyone who's competent or any good. As soon as you get anyone who, like you say, like kind of Rand Paul in the debates and stuff, he runs rings around people, but he's not given the airtime. He's even people like, if you look at the trolling that's happened to Andrew Yang and people, they kind of spell his name wrong, or they kind of miss him off entirely, or they.
What do you think of Andrew Yang?
Rubbish.
Good. Move on.
You know, too statist, too authoritarian, too redistribution. He's just, I don't rate him at all.
And pretty moronic.
Yeah, not, you know, relatively speaking, not as bad as Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and these people.
Yes, and not quite as woke and all that.
But still beyond the pale. Yeah.
Yes.
Where was I going with this? Yeah, so they don't get the airtime, they don't get any of that. The only way I can see it happening in the US, and it won't happen overnight, is if the corporate press fail and they get so bad that people just don't trust them at all. People stop watching the news and they listen to podcasts and they listen to Rogan and
traditional media dies.
So traditional media dies
of new media,
and new media kind of gives these people like Rand Paul and whoever, you know, the airtime. You know, Rand Paul appeared on Rogan, for example, like Bernie Sanders did, and I think Andrew Yang might have done as well, and Tulsi Gabbard and people, you know. He has like something. You know, has like tens of millions of people watch and listen to his podcasts. You know, every single one. So, if kind of new media kind of got to the forefront, I think that's the only time people, you know, like Rand Paul and whoever, stand a chance. The difficulty is that we don't really have the mechanisms to get these people. Even if legacy media failed over here, we've got such a system where it's just not possible. You have to, you know, you have to be a member of one of the two main parties. System. And we don't have open primaries. We don't have any kind of primaries really. I mean, the Conservatives toyed with a couple before, but you still have to get through Tory central office to get on the ballot. The only way you can even get elected is to be as an independent. And then, you know, what do? You have to kind of form your own party, and It's just never going to happen. I mean, you can do it in. There are other countries with presidential systems, like France, obviously with Macron, and you know, there are ways to become, you know, president of other countries without having a party. We are screwed. So I don't think it's ever going to happen over here. I don't think it's going to happen soon in America. It was very unlikely to happen.
Yeah.
You know, the system is engineered to keep these two main parties in power, and they're both the same. They're just arguing about the nuances. We've discussed this before. The difference between the left and the right it's just means. They still want to do the same thing. They want to control your life. So the system is in place to keep power kind of centralised within these two parties, and until the media kind of dies, because they're.
And you think that you see that as the key?
I see that as I see that very much as one of the things that needs to happen.
Interestingly, I was never of that opinion. I certainly believed that the media was a part of it, but until 2020, until the coronavirus pandemic, I didn't see just how powerful, just how influential, just how important, and just how in lockstep and in their own little Westminster bubble the media were in this country. And so I'm very much more of the opinion now that they do have to. They have to wane in some way in favour of new media.
But if you looked at the media around some of the Republican and some of the Democratic candidates in the run up to the 2016 election as well, and they were so in favour. I mean, and they've been in favour of Biden now, haven't they?
It's regardless of any previous transgressions or hair sniffing or anything else. Right, bring back to the UK. Get your rant on.
We're screwed.
Is Steve Baker seriously the closest thing we have to Rand Paul?
Oh, but that's like.
The answer might be yes.
It might be, but that's just because we've got such a sorry state of affairs. I mean, I would have put. So, Douglas Carswell, I think was the most libertarian MP.
I think you're probably right, but he's not an MP anymore.
No, he's not, and he was probably the closest that we would have had to Rand Paul. But I
think you're right actually, because he was also, well, I say was. He is very eloquent. He's very knowledgeable. He's got a knowledge of history. He's a smart guy.
Oh, he's extraordinarily clever.
Yes,
and he's got a certain presence about him.
Yep.
He talks very, very well in debates and explaining his point calmly and coolly.
Yeah, you're right, but he's not there.
but my point is that you could have compared him. I mean, so if the question is he the closest? Probably yes. But you cannot compare Steve Baker with Rand Paul. I think you can compare Douglas Carswell with Rand Paul, because they're both reasonably libertarian.
Yes.
But Steve Baker
has been proven to not be anything of the sort.
It's like, you could say that, it's like comparing a member of the Labour Party and saying who's the most like,
who's the most like Rand Paul?
Well, yeah, the same question.
Right, are there anyone else? Is there anyone in the current Conservative Party? Because the current Conservative Party is the only place you would have someone with libertarian views.
I mean, someone who's quite liberal is who's the guy that we spoke to? I can't remember his name.
See, this is the thing now, because I have forgotten his name, which just tells you all you need to know, because he's a Derby MP. Forgotten his name.
Rowley.
Lee Rowley. He came across as thoroughly liberal. And when I challenged him on where the hell the rest of the Liberals are in the Conservative Party, he's like, there's a few of us. But then he mentioned people like Liz Truss, who is the current Trade Secretary or whatever. I mean, and again, she's got some free market stuff.
They have the occasional semi-libertarian stance on a tiny, tiny slice of the economy, and that's the best you can get.
Yep.
I don't think there's anybody else. I mean, people like Dan Hannan, who was never an MP but an MEP, reasonably libertarian. But again, so going back to my rant in the last podcast. This is why I dislike the term, or I dislike the term more libertarian.
Yeah, you're like me. I hate the brand now
because
of it.
Because it's not an absolute, like voluntarist. It just moves with the Overton window. So people like Steve Baker get but people like Steve Baker get called libertarians, and everybody, other people are jumping on the bandwagon, thinking, okay, I'm going to call myself a libertarian now because it's quite cool. When they're actually very, very statist, and they might have a free market view on one particular thing. It just gives people a bad name. Voluntarist is bang. That's it's
until
an
that gets taken.
It's an absolute.
Until that gets taken over.
Well, I don't think it can though. It's an absolute.
Just because of the word voluntary.
It's like anarchist. Think how long the term anarchist has been around, and that's never been. You can't water down anarchy.
No, but the problem with no, I disagree, because anarchy has got two definitions to it. It's got the definition of chaos and the definition of no state. So you call people anarchists when they're rioting on the street, and that conforms to one of the two definitions of anarchy.
Yeah, but that's different from in a political statist term. It means no state. So it's never gone from being no state to a little bit of state.
Agreed. So but one assumes it was the statists that came up with the chaotic definition.
No, it was the original anarchists.
Was it?
Yeah, bomb makers. Yeah, so the original anarchists just wanted to cause chaos
in order to overthrow the state.
Yeah, and there was some. I can't remember the guy's name who was. This was in I think the turn of the century before, and he was or kind of around about that time. Certainly well over 100 years ago. And he was like an anarchist bomb maker, and he got done for a bomb exploding. It wasn't him, but his defence was I couldn't have been throwing that bomb because I was at home making bombs, which is a fantastic line. But they
just different ones.
but they were quite brazen with their views on things. So that's where the original anarchists were left wingers. They were kind of they're socialists, and they just wanted to cause chaos and then get their way that way. So there are the two definitions of kind of anarchy, but they have stayed the same. Whereas libertarian, the definition is stretched, and so it moves with the Overton window, which anarchy and voluntarism. I don't think that can do because that's. But
it's the difference between. But this is the problem with freedom, isn't it? Though the term freedom, it's like freedom from or freedom to, isn't it? There are the different ways you can spin freedom.
There's not freedom from. There's free from. That's people. That's people misusing the word. That's not another definition.
It's all misusing the word. But yes, I get.
But I don't think. I'm agreeing with you. I don't think anarchy is misusing the word. There are two.
But you can turn around. But you can. Because of the two definitions, you can tag one with the other.
And libertarian, don't forget the original libertarians were left-wingers as well.
Yeah.
So that's another reason to perhaps dislike the term.
That's why I like to say we're on the left sometimes. It's funnier.
But I like voluntarist as a term.
Yeah, I must admit, recently I've been coming round to that way of thinking, just because of exactly what you're talking about, is that people define themselves as libertarian. Or, you look on Twitter and people talk about the libertarians and everything, you go, that's not a libertarian view at all, let alone the parodying of, or just, when people put out libertarian tropes that are just completely wrong.
Like when Nick Timothy writes his article again and again.
Nick Timothy. I mean, he just thinks the Conservative Party has been taken over by libertarians, doesn't he? It's like, which ones? Where? But yeah, he tweeted a meme of it was the swimming pool meme. You seen that one? It's like libertarians make terrible lifeguards or whatever, and it's like where do you start with how nonsense that is? Because in his words, in his mind, libertarian equals selfish to the point of just in that case, letting people die based on a job where you are paid to save people's lives. I mean, it's so much nonsense.
Yeah, it's not even being selfish, is it? The selfish person would jump in to save his job and get a pay rise.
Exactly.
It's just. The point is that libertarians are
evil.
Morons and evil and
The Libertarian Party, coming back to the US, the Libertarian Party has got what's her name? Is it Joe something? The current leader, not Gary Johnson, Joe Jorgensen or something? Is it something like that?
I can't remember. Moron.
The reason you're saying that is because of a particular tweet in the last couple of weeks.
Possibly.
I mean, it's not like you had a lot of respect for her anyway, but. There was the Black Lives Matter one, the anti-racist tweet. I take it you remember this one.
Yeah,
it's
I can't remember
It's
the
not
specifics.
good enough. It's not good enough to not be racist.
Yeah, you've got to be.
You have to be actively anti-racist. Hashtag capital letters Black Lives Matter. The Libertarian Party.
I know.
So, I mean, I knew when I was asking you these questions,
Well,
it was in the context of they're nowhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, so that was the. I'd heard a couple of things about her. That was the one that, because I'm not following her, but I saw everyone quote tweet saying it's not enough to be against this. You have to be anti, whatever.
Put the state in there. I think that's fantastic. If you put an anti-statist view in there, you've got to be actively against the state. It just proved that she was wrong.
But even I mean, so I remember back in I think it was the 2016. Yeah, it would have been the 2016 election where they were kind of interviewing Gary Johnson about things, and they were asking about the what do you think of the current state of affairs in Aleppo? And he's like, what's an Aleppo, or where's Aleppo? Or it's like, hang on, it's you're just not prepared, you're ill prepared.
Yeah, but how can you be so politically naive or stupid to tweet with the hashtag Black Lives Matter? To tweet all of that tweet.
How can she not know that they are fundamentally a communist association?
So was it stupidity? Was it naivety? Was it because I think she came out later and said, I was tweeting the movement. What is this about people saying, oh, it wasn't the organisation, it was the movement? And you go, what? The movement that wants to overthrow capitalism and abolish the police and impose Marxism? It's like, that's still the movement. Tell me how to distinguish the movement. It's nonsense.
But just a whole, it's not enough to not be racist. I'm sorry.
I'm not even going to go there.
Yeah, it's the whole sentiment of the tweet was like it was written by a 15-year-old intern who'd,
Maybe it was. But
again, that just shows the utter unprofessional nature of the modern Libertarian Party in America. They're just, I don't rate them at all.
But is that because, going back to you talking about party politics and power, is that because it just attracts those who want power?
Well, yeah, so I don't want to get all no true Scotsman on here.
Yep.
But no true Libertarian would be in a party seeking to be president.
Yeah.
Just wouldn't happen. So you're never going to get the right people.
So I read an article by Per Byland, who's brilliant. Who's brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah, he's great, isn't he? And this was an article he wrote years ago, but it did the rounds again. It came up in my feed, and it was his take on how we get closer, how we move the state by actively doing things. And I don't know whether you read it or not, but it was about creating the community, not structures, but just actively working with other people of like mind that are near you to do things to replace what the state would normally do for you, or that the state's involved with in some way. I suppose the summary I'd give is it was creating black markets. And in fact, he uses the term black market in there, obviously. Yeah. And you and I, I'm not going to say that black markets are bad. Of course. Of course. But to me, the fundamental flaw with it, I'm not saying it wasn't a laudable aim, but the problem is when the state has a monopoly on force, then all you need is one person who says they're libertarian, anarchist, whatever, and there's going to be part of your collective, that then reports you to the state.
Yeah,
and it's all over, and so it's like, let's tax you, or let's ban you, or let's take you to court, or let's put you in prison because we don't like your black market.
I've got an actual example of that.
Right.
So I hate to blackpill you, but a friend of mine.
On there.
Yeah, a friend of mine actually did just that. This was years ago.
Right.
So he got together with people, and I think it was just like people like in his local area, and they just got together and thought, what are our skills and expertise?
Can we trade them?
Let's come together, and if I help you with I'm a good plumber, I can help you with a bit of plumbing, you can help me with a bit of this. It was just like a bartering system between like friendly neighbours.
Yeah.
And the state came after them and said, no, you can't do that. And they weren't. It wasn't money wasn't even exchanging
No,
hands. It wasn't like they
no.
were paying each other under the counter.
It's like
was
me
just like,
saying, "Can you come and put up a shelf for me?"
yeah,
I'll-
you help me with my internet connection. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
It was stuff like that, and
I can put up my own shelves, by the way.
you can't. You you can't do that. We're coming after you, and we're going to come. We're not going to come after you for all the tax you should have paid doing this in the past.
Even though there was no money.
Yeah.
And this is in the UK, or this is in
Yep.
the US.
Actually, no. So
That sounds like a US thing.
no, it wouldn't have been the US. So he's lived in a few countries, but
Right.
I think this was in the UK. I'm pretty sure this is when he was in the UK,
Yeah.
just like a local neighbourhood thing, helping each other out. No, sorry, sunshine. If you got your license for doing that,
Yeah.
awful.
I mean, my answers I knew when I asked you that I can't see, I can't see any prospect of the Conservative Party in any way, shape or form going back towards any kind of free market, any kind of deregulation of any meaningful
So
sense.
what of the
or even anyone running to be leader that is in that.
what does the Conservative Party, and you can say this about Conservatives in America and all over the place, what have they ever managed to conserve? Genuine question. What have they?
Yeah.
All they do is they kind of slow stuff down a little bit, but they still push it.
Socialism, as I like to call
But
it.
they still push it in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
It's not like they're slowing it down by, enacting some of the acts of Parliament and kind of getting rid of legislation. But they don't get rid of it. It's not that they're getting rid of it slower or than
I
it's
see this.
enacted. They're still pushing it in the wrong direction.
I see this as a bit like entropy. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
In that you can have small pockets in the universe that are going in the other direction, but generally speaking, it's heading for disorder.
But yeah, but my point is that it's not even that if the Conservative Party were getting rid of legislation and deregulating,
Repealing, yeah.
just not doing it as fast as the socialists do it when they get in,
Yes.
I would still be disappointed in them.
But there would be a break.
It wouldn't be quite so bad, but they're still
Yeah.
pushing it in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Just slightly slower.
It's not like it's a sawtooth.
No, not
Is
at all.
it?
Not at all.
No.
They just don't run at it like the socialists do.
Yeah.
But they're still pushing it in the wrong direction. So it's
Yeah.
not even, you don't even get a temporary reprieve
No.
under a Conservative
You
government.
just get it slowed
You
down.
just get it slightly slower. So I don't.
And right now,
or you get
really
it on
not slow
steroids.
at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you get it on steroids. So I don't think they conserve anything at all, and I don't think they ever have.
So is this another black pill?
This is another black pill.
podcast?
Yeah.
Should we redefine the podcast now? We're really being quite negative at the moment, but that is just the way I see it.
Yeah. So in a positive thing, I can see the corporate press and legacy media failing. So I think that'll be a good thing. I think there will
What are
be
your time scales on that? I'm not going to hold you to it, but is this 2 year, 5 year, 10 year, 20 year?
It's our lifetime, but I think probably 10,
Right.
I think probably 10 or 20 years.
Okay.
I would say hopefully sooner, but you never know. I think things like
But it's not going to fall off a cliff. It's just going to trend that way. Do you think?
I think it'll get worse before it gets better. But I think the worse it gets. What you're seeing now.
Oh no, it has to. I'm saying the trend away from people trusting it and using it.
Yeah, I don't think it'll drop off a cliff. I think it'll just get worse. What you're kind of seeing now is that they're struggling for viewers a lot of the time and struggling for people to buy papers. So what they do, instead of trying to be a little bit radical, is they just go to their base. So the right-wing ones tend to go more to the right, the left-wing ones tend to go more to the left. But what's happening is they're just shrinking and shrinking.
Yeah.
The only ones that are doing well are the ones...
right-wing ones really going to their base?
Yeah, I think so.
What, like the Telegraph?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Telegraph are pretty right-wing. The Statist, you don't confuse Statist and Libertarian. I think they're quite right-wing.
Okay.
The Mail, they're pretty right wing. The only ones who are doing well are things like the Spectator, who are going, you know what, give us a decent opinion on the left or the right, and you can be in a magazine.
I feel that the Spectator are broadening their appeal quite deliberately in order to increase circulation. They've had that aim.
They've always had quite a range of people. That
I think it's getting.
It might
my
be more
definition
now.
is worse. I think it's getting more woke. Is my problem with it. But I suppose again that is a broad set of opinions. But it's not like it was. It's not like it was even a year ago.
But they've always had people like Paul Mason as and people have written columns in there. So they've always had maybe there's more woke stuff now. They've always had the odd extreme left-wing view in there.
Yeah, which is fine. But like even Rod Lill is less sound than he was. James Danningpole doesn't have his column anymore. It's just not quite as good. I'm not able to get my teeth in it. In fact, I've not been a subscriber for months.
I haven't been for a while either because I didn't find it to be as good as it used to be.
This is it, and so the circulation's gone up, and so there is a way of obviously getting a larger proportion of people, but they've lost people like us.
Yeah, for sure.
More good news.
But I can see newspapers and legacy media failing. I can see things like cryptocurrencies increasing and people avoiding tax that way. So in 10 or 20 years' time, I think...
So you don't think you're just going to have to declare your cryptocurrency earnings and transactions to the government? And
people will declare something that they've got in a tiny wallet, and they'll have another wallet that's completely hidden, and they'll do their transactions over Tor.
Okay, the Tor stuff is interesting, but the concept... Don't you think it's going to get to the point where the government will demand access to your bank account to see your statements and stuff like this? I'm not saying that won't encourage people to have these other payment methods and off the book stuff.
And it will be like when you.
Do you see that happening?
Yeah, of course. But it will be like when you're forced to hand over your gold in America in like the 30s or whatever, and people will just kind of bury it in 2 holes in the garden and show them 1 hole with 1 gold bar, and okay, here you go, you've got me. Here's my gold, and you've got a huge stash under the shed. So I think people would.
Frankly, I think
not divulge it.
Even though cryptocurrencies will allow that to happen in essentially an easier, more accessible way, I can see people doing that with gold as well.
For sure.
And buying physical, certainly precious metals that are easily tradable in that way, just in case. Stick some gold under the mattress. As opposed to some cash.
Yeah, so I can see that happening, and I think ultimately, and the more people realise that they can't live with the other side as well. That's a good thing.
The other side.
Well, so you've got right wingers and left wingers, or people broadly on the right, and people broadly on the left, and they're getting more and more angry. If you look at the statistics about people who socialise with with kind of the opposite.
Yes. Polarisation. Yeah.
People are getting more and more polarised. That's a great thing as well, because the more you realise that you can't live with the other side, they're going to have to be maybe we won't have a government that's based purely on geographic location anymore. We'll have you can choose who you want to be governed by. That's probably like a first step, and then you get that almost like the old system they had in Ireland, where you can kind of choose your courts and choose and everything will get we'll pay for the police that we want, and you can have nothing.
Is this a route to localism?
Ultimately, I'm hoping for more than that, but
yes,
but it doesn't even need to be localism. It doesn't need to be based on geographic location at all.
Yes.
So localism might be a part of that, but and you might get people moving to different areas because things are more local. But I'm hoping that it's just going to go kind of straight to it doesn't matter where you live now. You can transact and deal with anyone anywhere in the world.
And this is what the internet brings, is that level of being able to transact, not even with just people in your own country, but people wherever, to get a service that you might want, crossing borders and time zones and language barriers and everything else. Yeah, in order to try and that to create the ultimate black market in that way, even though as far as we're concerned that is just a market.
A free market.
Yeah.
I believe is the correct description.
Yes. Well, on that cheerier note, let's end it there. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of Sounding Board. You can go to soundingboard.com if you want to look at our previous podcasts and links to our videos. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can find us on all your favourite podcast apps. Please talk about us online. Please share our podcast with other people, and we'll see you next time.